Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order if I could. I'm going to start with a roll call of the board members. Starting at the top, Director Perotti.
Present.
Director Lemberger.
Present.
Director McQuarrie.
Present.
Director Sheeler. I saw him down here. Vice Chair Tabor.
Here.
And Chair Davis is present. We do have a quorum. We will begin the meeting.
Bill is here.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I'm going to start with the report regarding the posting of the agenda. Madam Clerk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The agenda was posted on Friday, April 16th, 2021 at MTD's administrative office, mailed and emailed to those on the agenda list, and posted on MTD's website.
Great, thank you very much. Moving to the consent calendar, we have two items this morning. Item 4 is the approval of the prior minutes for the meetings of March 16th and March 30th, 2021. Item 5, this is that we're being asked to review and approve the cash reports for the periods March 5th through March 26th, 2021, as well as March 27th through April 9th, 2021. Any comments or questions on either of those two items from members of the board? Mr. Sheeler, Director Sheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I did have one question on, I'm not sure what cash report it was, but it was the entry talking about the aerial photography. And I was just wondering if maybe staff could explain a little bit more of what was looked at and what will be done with the footage.
Mr. Strada.
I'd want to get back to the board maybe at the next meeting with more details, but essentially it was, updating images and information for us for all of our sites. But I can share more with you at the next meeting as far as what our intentions are.
Okay, thanks.
Great. There are no other questions. Do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Director Perotti to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Tabor. I will go really quickly. Director Perotti.
Aye.
Director Lemberger.
Aye.
Director McQuarrie.
Aye.
Director Sheeler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Aye.
Chair Davis votes aye. Consent calendar is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This is comment for items not on today's agenda within the purview of the Metropolitan Transit District. Madam Clerk, do I have any people who wish to speak under public comment?
We have no general public comment at this time.
Good, thank you very much. That moves us to our first item on our regular agenda. This is the financial audit services contract award recommendation. Mr. Strada, you want to open this item?
Certainly. Obviously, this is our annual single audit process, and what we want to do here is recommend award of a contract as a result of the solicitation that was put out. I'm going to hand this item off to our Director of Finance and Administration, Brad Davis. Mr. Davis.
Good morning, Chair Davis and members of the board. Before we get into describing the solicitation process, just real quickly wanted to give a recap of our history, recent history with auditing firms. And as you may recall, we had been using McGowan Gunterman for a long period of time, in excess of 10 years. And with their decision to get out of the government auditing business in 2018, we kind of received short notice that time. So we put out a quick request for quotes and went through a process. We selected 4 firms and interviewed them, and then made a decision at that point to go with Brown Armstrong, and for a 2-year period, with the intent of doing a full formal RFP to select an auditor, which is the item before you at this point in time. So With us today is Roger Martinez, who is the lead partner for auditing service for Vasquez and Company, the firm that is being recommended for the contract award. And he'll be available later to answer any questions or introduce himself. And at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to Valerie White, our procurement specialist, who can take us through the procurement process that led us up to this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. On February 4th, we issued the request for proposals. Public notices were placed in the area newspapers. The opportunity was posted on our website, and firms known to provide audit services to California public transit operators were also sent the RFP directly. Following that submission period, MTD received 4 proposals, and an evaluation committee conducted a comprehensive evaluation. This committee included MTD's Brad Davis, Steve Moss, and Mr. Scott Davis, a retired CPA, who some of you may recall performed the government audits at the once MTD contracted McGowan and Gunterman. In reviewing the proposals, they first individually ranked each firm on the following factors in descending order of importance: prior experience, proposal price, and work plan. The accumulated totals, or the final scorecard of each offer, is presented in the staff report. The evaluation committee then met to discuss, and they determined that there was a competitive range. They interviewed Vasquez and Company and the Poon Group, but Vasquez and Company ultimately demonstrated they would offer MTD the best value. Vasquez and Company, let me tell you, was founded over 50 years ago. They have multiple offices, including Glendale, California. That office would be the one to serve MTD. When staff conducted reference checks, the references from California local governments and transit agencies were quite positive. The evaluation committee unanimously agreed that Vasquez and Company presented a clearer and more cohesive understanding of the audit requirements. Additionally, the firm was also able to clearly identify the key audit team members and their roles, all of who were introduced and participated in the interview. Another factor was Vasquez and Company hosts educational events and provides resources for their clients to stay current in accounting and auditing matters, such as those gas pronouncements, the federal and state regulations, all pertaining to local governments in accounting and reporting and compliance. And then furthermore, all the proposed firm prices, all the proposals relatively were close in price, but the proposed cost over the 3-year agreement with Vasquez and Company for the financial audit services was at $112,110, which averages $37,300 annually. And that reflected a lower price than the average cost of all the offers MTD received and our initial independent cost estimate. Based on this analysis, Vasquez and Company's offer was found to be fair and reasonable. And let me not forget to add that this time we'll have options for a contract extension, which may be exercised if mutually agreed to. So let me just conclude this presentation on the procurement process with staff's recommendation for the board to authorize the GM to award the contract to Vasquez and Company for a price of $112,110 for the financial audit services for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2021, 2022, and 2023, with the option for $38,110 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, and then $39,253 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. And then you see in your board report, the total of a 5-year contract will be $189,400 $473. With a big exhale on all the numbers there, I'm now happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. White. The excellent report in that regard. Mr. Martinez, Mr. Vasquez, would you like to say anything at this point?
Actually, this is Roger Martinez. I am the audit practice leader for the firm, and also I will be serving as the lead engagement partner. I just want to thank you for the opportunity. We met with your selection committee. We had a really good conversation about not only about your needs, but about where we can bring value. And we look forward to working with you and having the opportunity to serve the board.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for being here this morning. Are there any questions or comments from the board at this point? Director Sheeler.
Thank you, Chair. My first question has to do with the district's approach on handling solicitation of outside vendors. I noticed that we've seen matrix analysis of the various firms that submit. And in this case, where they were looking at experience, price, and plan, and then coming up with a ranking total. I was just wondering, is it possible in the future, if and when appropriate, to include another category or blend it into maybe one of the categories, which would be the firm's inclusivity in hiring and promotion? Can that be considered as we look at the kinds of partners that we're going to be working with?
Certainly, we can include that. There's no specified categories, and we're free to develop them as we see fit.
Great. Director Perotti, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I was just wondering, and I believe I've asked this question before, but I just can't remember the answer. Do we at MTD have a policy of how often we rotate auditors? I know we do at the city, and I'm curious if there's anything like every 3-5 years we look at someone different, or is that not the case?
No, actually, we do not have a specific policy. We have in the past gone out before to evaluate different auditing firms. And at that point in time, several years ago, we did conclude that it was in the best interest of the district to continue with McGowan Gunterman. Now, I think I would believe that we're trying to make a more of a concerted effort not to maintain a firm for so long. And that's why, at this point, the maximum would be 5 years, which is a fairly common length for contracts. And it would be the intent at that time, again, to go out and view the market and see what other firms can bring MTD.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other, Director Limburger?
Yeah, this would be an addendum sort of very similar to Director Sheeler's question of, it looks like Vasquez and Company is, a DBE entity. And I'm wondering then as well, not only including, inclusivity and hiring as part of a review, but also if the entity itself qualifies as a minority woman-owned DBE business as well.
So at this time, we at this solicitation specifically did not request or give any extra weight to if you were a certified disadvantaged business enterprise. But that is definitely a piece of something that we can discuss for the future, what commitment we want to make as an agency. Yes.
Roger, can you answer that question? Are you considered a disadvantaged business enterprise under the federal government guidelines?
We are. We actually take pride in that we're the largest minority-owned CPA firm in the state of California. Just to give you a few statistics, 70% of our firm are actually women, and 80% of our partners are women. We are a very diverse firm, and we really take pride in, I wish I had the statistics to show you, but we do have all the certifications, and we really like to represent the communities we serve.
Thank you. Director Sheeler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that answer, Mr. Martinez. I actually think I have two questions for you. Number one, will you be heading the audits over the duration of this contract in order to provide continuity and understanding of MTDs as an organization?
Yes, that is correct. We as a firm, we are also registered with the PCAOB, which is the organization that monitors all CPA firms that serve publicly traded companies. And so we have a policy of rotating partners every 5 years, which is what public companies, so in this case, since the contract is for 5 years, my goal is to serve as the lead engagement partner over the next 5 years, if given the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And then the last one, I've noticed yours and your firm's experience with California transportation issues, so that's wonderful. In your opinion, how do you see the additional workload burden on accounting and auditing due to the host of the new federal stimulus plans?
So one of the issues that I still need to look as to how your staffing has where it stands compared to over a year ago. There's obviously a lot more regulations with all of the grants and the funding that are coming in, and that obviously is a burden on staff to keep track of everything. Plus also, you have to make sure that you're segregating all of the different costs for each funding, and that creates a burden. Staff are being asked to do more with less. All transportation agencies, obviously fare revenues has gone dramatically down. So that is a significant issue. And while it is a burden, the reality is that with ridership down, you do need to pursue much funding from the state and the federal government. I mean, you need the funds in order to continue to survive. And our goal is to really help staff with all of the latest pronouncements, the changes, walking them through the process to try to make it as easy on them as it is possible, and to also assist in the financial reporting process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So thank you for offering to assist us. Appreciate it.
Great.
That's all I had, Chair.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item?
We have no public comments for this item.
Okay, great. I do have a comment on Mr. Martinez. I really thought your proposal was excellent. I looked at a lot of proposals over my career, and again, this really stood out. Very impressive. So thank you. Really good work.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion on this particular item? Okay, the motion would be to authorize the award of the attached contract for financial audit services to Vasquez and Company.
Motion to approve, Chair.
Motion by Director Perotti. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Director McQuarrie seconded that item. There'll be a roll call vote, and I will start at the top. Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Limburger?
Aye.
Director McQuarrie?
Aye.
Director Sheeler?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor?
Aye.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous vote, 6-0. Mr. Martinez, look forward to working with you, sir. Thank you for being here this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here this morning. Good, thanks. Good report, Ms. White and Mr. Davis. I enjoyed the presentation and how you laid it out in the selection process. And board, all good comments, really good comments from our board this morning. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Takes us to item 8. This is commercial property insurance renewal. We're recommending binding coverage of commercial property insurance with Nationwide Insurance Company effective May 24th through May 24th, 2021 to 2022. Staff.
Good morning, Chair Davis.
Good morning, Mr. Cortez. How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good. Fog hasn't gotten here yet, so I'm still looking at sunshine.
I'll hand
Okay.
this item off, Mr. Cortez.
Raphael's already jumped on it. He's moving right ahead. The floor is yours, Mr. Cortez.
Thank you. Morning, Jerry. Good morning, members of the board. Pleased to present the 2021-2022 commercial property insurance policy renewal. MTD's risk department is making the recommendation to proceed with the renewal. I would like to highlight the following. Risk is recommending to move coverage from Travelers Insurance Company to Nationwide Insurance. Nationwide Insurance Company has an AM Best rating of A+ superior. In today's extremely hard property market, with the help of Bob Fatch at Brown & Brown Insurance, we are pleased to be presenting a renewal quote with a reduction in premiums of about roughly 3.9% from the expiring policy. Policy will continue to provide coverage for all MTD locations consisting of 550 Olive Street, 5353 Overpass Road, 5775 Carpinteria Avenue, 1020 Chapala Street, with a combined blanket building coverage of $12,263,754. Closing, this is an action item, and MTD's risk department is making the recommendation to the board to approve the renewal of the commercial property insurance. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. Are there questions from the board? Director Sheeler, please. Bill.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, are there any future insurance implications for the development and build out of the Calle Real site? Is there any additional burden, or will this affect our property insurance? Does that come into play at any point? Or
I could take that, Mr. Cortez. That item would be worked out during our negotiations, which is a separate matter from this at this time.
okay, it's just curious. Good to see that there's actually a reduction in price. The other insurance quotes on other issues that have been brought to us have been significantly higher. So it's good to see it appears that Nationwide is on our side.
Oh, Bill, you couldn't help yourself on that one. Okay, no other questions? Not seeing any. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak, Madam Clerk?
I have no hands raised and no public comments submitted for this item.
Okay, now we're back to board action. Is there a recommendation to recommend it to actually bind coverage with Nationwide Insurance Company?
Chair, motion to approve.
I have a motion approved by Director Tabor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Director McCrory seconded it. Okay, we will do a roll call vote on this item. Director Perotti,
Aye.
Director Limburger,
Aye.
Director McCrory, Director McCrory. I'll come back to Chuck. Director Sheeler.
I've got no sound, but I'll.
Yeah. He was close, wasn't he?
You almost made it.
Okay, Director Sheeler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor,
Yes.
Chuck, do you have video? Vice Chair Tabor votes yes. We will take that as a 5-0 with one absent, since he could not get his vote in. Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a comment. My whole computer went silent during that vote. So anyway.
Yeah, that's fine, Chuck. We did pass it. We just counted you as not voting on the item itself, but it's fine. It passed 5-0. We're good. Okay, we have a time certain at 9 o'clock. So we have 7 minutes here. Mr. Estrada, do you want to jump to your report and try to fill that time?
Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. So you want to advance to the general manager report?
Yeah, we will advance. If with no objection by consensus, we'll go to item 10, general manager's report prior to the 9 o'clock time certain. No objection? So moved. Okay. Jerry.
Yes, thank you. Chair Davis, members of the board, a couple items from the GM report that I'd like to highlight and acknowledge our staff on. One of the first items is Mr. Cassanon. I've mentioned Mr. Manny Cassanon, our safety and training administrator. I've mentioned this project before, and when the pandemic started, one of the issues that occurred was the DMV halted behind the wheel testing, which made it even more difficult for us to hire drivers, which is something we've needed to do. And that's been an ongoing problem. There is a program through DMV where called the Employer Testing Program. It's very comprehensive to be approved for this particular program. Mr. Cassanon has led that effort, and it's been very impressive. And just recently, he was able to get us certified through the federal government end of it as well. So now Mr. Cassanon is a DMV examiner for Class B drive testing. Our routes have been approved by the DMV as well as the federal side of things. So that's a big kudos to Mr. Cassanon for getting us to this point. And you'll hear more about that when we get to the draft service plan, the need to hire more drivers. And the ability to streamline that process is critical for us going forward. So it's been quite an effort. It's taken most of the year to get to this point. And it's a lot of work. I'm really proud of Manny and the effort he put forward for this. Also, another project related to, let's say, the coronavirus efforts is the driver barrier project. And these are the vapor doors that we've installed on, at this point, all of our 40-foot diesel buses. We're down to a handful of 30-foot diesel buses that remain, as well as the Arctics, which we need to get completed. Those are 60-footers that are allocated to line 28 prior to the start of UCSB really ramping back up. We'll want to get those done. They are scheduled. The other fleet that's outstanding is the BYD fleet. That's been a little bit more problematic for us. They've had to work out specific designs for the structural side of it to hang the door on. Both the door manufacturer and BYD have agreed on a solution for that. It's taken some time, and we've approved that. So that'll be coming next as we go forward. But we do board in the back on those traditionally. So we've been able to continue to use those vehicles. Moving on, another item in the general manager report update is the work here at Terminal 1 related to the Southern California Edison's essentially Charge Ready Transport Program. As you remember, we received a Charge Ready Transport Program grant for our light duty purchase of 14 Chevy Bolts, and the infrastructure is what Southern California Edison helped us with. They actually did the installation, upgraded the facility as necessary to support that fleet. That was done. We also received another grant for heavy duty, and that's 14 charge ports under our center canopy here at Terminal 1. So that was another big win for us. We felt being awarded that grant by Edison. They've come out, they've done the preliminary work, the design consultants. We've also used Stantec, who's our architect for most of our construction projects, to do back end to pick up where Edison's going to leave off to complete that and set up the chargers. So that project's coming along nicely in the planning phase. We still will have to go through the permitting process with the city soon as well. Another big news for us was the California Energy Commission staff recently released a notice of proposed awards. MTD was included for blueprints for medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicle infrastructure grant. That's a partnership. MTD went in with CalSTART and also the city of Santa Barbara to work on, for us, the microgrid project, as well as working on other items throughout the region within the city. We're really excited about this award. We're looking forward to working with CEC staff to finalize that and get it approved. So that's a very exciting opportunity for us. As you know, as we build out to meet our zero emission goals, one of the major issues is going to be resiliency and how we handle that. And this is the first step in that direction, to work on the planning side of that, to figure out what makes sense for our facility going forward. And eventually, hopefully, that those blueprints can be used by other transit operators throughout the state. That's the objective. Also, on that particular, I guess along that project or that goal, our Chevy Bolt fleet has increased from 10 to 14 recently. The last 4 have come in, so we're excited about that. And also the Other big project we have is our fleet renewal campaign for our diesel fleet. Those are the bridge. Let's face it, the diesel fleet is the bridge to our zero emission fleet, and we need to maintain them in a state of good repair. And the board had previously, allocated significant funding for that. That project is going forward in the timeline, and that's going to be relevant in the upcoming discussion on our next agenda item. And we're almost at 9 o'clock, so I've got one other bit of good news off the general manager's report, and that's congratulations to Hillary Blackerby, our planning and marketing manager. As you know, MTD is a member of the California Transit Association. She participates on the state legislative committee for the CTA, and she's been essentially added to the Climate Action Plan on Transportation Infrastructure subcommittee for that group or subgroup. And we're excited by that. That'll keep us very well informed of what needs to happen as we move forward to achieve our goals. That concludes my update for the general manager's report. And if you have any questions for me, you can answer them now, or you can bring this matter back since it's 9 a.m. You're muted, Dave.
It would help to be able to hear me. Yeah, we can basically come back and under other business and reports, if there are any questions, we can pick that up at that point in time. So I am going to go to the 9 o'clock time certain item. This is a discussion of the draft service plan for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Staff is making a presentation today to the board. There will be no decisions today. In fact, today is only to receive comments and feedback from the board and public. There will be additional public comment at 2 virtual meetings that staff will be holding later this month and into the month of May. We'll also be doing, as you will hear, a survey, a bilingual survey of community members, as well as a presentation of the Ivy Community Services District. And coming back to the board, I would assume in June, and there'll also be public comment available at that point in time. So purpose of today's meeting is to hear proposals relative to the service plan for the coming year and to take any feedback from the board and the public at this time. No action to be taken today. So Mr. Strada, would you like to open this item?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to provide a little overview, background of how we got to where we are today, and then hand it off to Ms. Blackerby, our planning and marketing manager. As all of you know, when the pandemic struck, and everyone's familiar with it, it was significant impact on all transit operations around the country. MTD is certainly no exception here in Santa Barbara. What we did immediately or very quickly is we suspended coverage routes. We suspended routes that specifically were tailored for university, essentially UC Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara City College, since they were essentially exiting campus at that time, stopping in-person educational activities at the campuses. So, but we still remained with core services, the UCSB and City College, and we really focused our service on to provide service for essential workers. That's been the priority throughout the pandemic, especially early on. And we're proud of the efforts that our operations team has put forward throughout the pandemic. It's been really impressive to watch them work. But also there've been a lot of restrictions on public transit. For example, the number of people you can board and maintain, have on board a bus. And what that's done is made it a little bit more difficult to provide the capacity you need on those core services. So what we did was we took those drivers that would have been allocated to other routes, and we're able to boost some of those lines. So it's worked out. We haven't had any driver furloughs or anything like that. And the reason, one of the other specific items I think you're gonna see a lot of comment on is the downtown waterfront electric shuttle service. We did suspend that immediately. With tourism pretty much non-existent early in the pandemic, that made a lot of sense. We were informed by city staff that they felt they were going to struggle to be able to subsidize that service. So it's been suspended, and the recommendation is, that it continue to be suspended. And without subsidy, coming forward, we would have to terminate the service. That's always been our position with that particular piece of service here on the South Coast. But going ahead, looking forward, and as Ms. Blackerby takes you through what we're proposing for the year, there are some key points, and it's going to be how fast are we able to board more individuals as they return to service? And will we have the drivers to be able to support that? Fortunately, we are very grateful for the subsidy we received, the additional subsidy we received from the federal government. At this point, the FTA is really the reason, with the funding they provided to public transit operators throughout the country. And really the minimum of what they've provided to everyone is about 132% of your 2018 operating expenses. And that's where MTD stands today. And again, we're grateful for that. That's the reason we're able to have this discussion right now and discuss which services we can bring back because of the financial support they provided us. But at some point, that money will be exhausted. And the question will be, will our ridership have returned with the passenger fares that come along with it, which is about $7 million a year. And that's going to dictate what happens long-term to our services. So really in the short term is what we're here to discuss today, what we can do with what the resources we have. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Blackerby. It's all yours.
Good morning, Hillary.
Good morning, Chair and Board. Good to be with you today. So thank you, Jerry, for teeing everything up nicely. And now we'll walk through the slides. Talking about the proposed service plan that would go into effect August 16th, 2021. Make sure my clicking is working properly. There we go. So Jerry touched on these, but these are decision-making factors, and these are the things that have driven our service decisions all this past 13 months, essentially. So all of these things have helped us decide what service we were suspending, what service we were maybe boosting, and it ruled everything in the planning department and in operations. If we start with public health and fiscal stability, that is obviously, keeping everyone safe and healthy, both our employees and the public, is, the number one factor of the decisions we made this year. Making sure that the capacity was such that it was safe, that people felt safe on board, that our operators felt safe, not collecting fares, boarding through the rear door. That was another piece. Fiscal stability, the fact that we didn't collect fares for a year, that's a $7 million hit. Looking at as the federal assistance was coming in, and like Mr. Strata said, that's been, that's why we're not here today, or why we weren't here 6 months ago saying we're cutting, all this other service. And so we're really grateful for that. But we need to make that money last, because it's not like we're going to flip a switch, the pandemic's over, and we've got everybody who was on the bus before back on the bus. So we need to be very patient and conservative when it comes to our spending on this. School closures and schedules, I can tell you from a planning department perspective, that is the number one thing that ruled our work this year. It was fairly predictable that the City College and UCSB were, once the writing was on the wall and the different COVID spikes were happening, that those campuses were going to remain closed for the year. But K through 12 worked on a different set of sort of constraints and regulations. And so there were several times where we were prepared to bring our booster services that serve the junior highs and high schools back. We did, as I'll talk later, finally do that. But anything that has to do with school calendars or bell schedules even rules our whole schedule based on how it's structured. And then, of course, workforce constraints, and this should also be workforce and fleet, so kind of resource constraints when it comes to human resources and vehicles. And so Mr. Estrada mentioned the fact that we're working with a fleet renewal campaign coming up, which will, when some of those buses are away being worked on, reduce our fleet size. And the big piece is workforce constraints. If you don't have enough bus drivers to get the service out there, you can't provide the service. It's pretty obvious, but It's not always the first thing people think of when they hear that, you know, their bus line's being suspended. We were very conservative in the early portion of the pandemic to say, you know, we didn't know if how many people were going to get sick or be able to, you know, some people had to stay home because of underlying conditions, or they were suddenly responsible for staying at home with their kids. So that really was something that we wanted to make sure that the service we were putting out, we were able to make service, and we were. Going forward, we still have a bus operator shortage, and we're constantly trying to hire up. And so that process continues very aggressively from a recruitment standpoint. Also, mechanics, we need people to work on the buses so that they're ready to go out into service. So these are all the things that factor into our decision making. We don't make any of these decisions lightly. None of this is easy or fun, but we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing responsibly. So these proposed changes, normally this time of year, it would come to you with a very concrete set of proposals of how much service on each line, what kind of tweaks we're making. The first bullet here is partial or full restoration of lines 15X, 16, 27, and 28. I have slides on each one of these as we go through, so I'll just tell you what all we're going to talk about here. Continued suspension of lines 10, 36, 37, 90, 91, and 92. Those are ones that have been suspended this past year, and we're recommending continued suspension, at least not bringing them back in August. As Mr. Estrada mentioned, termination of downtown and waterfront shuttles is the proposal at this point. And there are other considerations for early 2022. So generally, we only like to make service changes in August. It certainly makes it easier. We're only printing one version of the schedule guide. It just sort of brings, sort of reliability, but it may be possible that some of the lines that we're continuing suspension of, we end up being able to bring back maybe in early 2020. We don't know for sure, but we're kind of needing to take it in baby steps. New service, the line 19X that we discussed last year, that's part of the freeway project, a mitigation for that. That is from Carpinteria, Santa Barbara's east side to City College. It was just peak service that's funded through freeway project, as I said. That's something that we do want to start eventually, but we want to make sure that City College is actually, that the campus is open. And then microtransit, which we've been talking about now for a while, but we're still waiting on those vehicles. And so that's not something we're going to be ready to start in August. So just to take us back a little, Mr. Estrada mentioned, that we had certainly suspended a great deal of service or certain lines in 2020. We did it in 2 rounds, March 19th and April 6th of 2020. We suspended, as you can tell from the last slide, because we're mentioning bringing them back or keeping them suspended. Line 10, which is Cathedral Oaks corridor, 15X, which is the express from City College to UCSB and Isla Vista. Line 16 is the SBCC shuttle, so it goes between downtown and the college. Line 28 is our UCSB shuttle workhorse, very, very productive route out in Isla Vista and UCSB. 36 is the Seaside shuttle in Carpinteria, and 37 is a crosstown shuttle between Santa Barbara's east and west side. Downtown and waterfront shuttle also suspended. Those are, they don't often go by their numbers, but it's lines 30 and 31. The booster services to K-12 schools, those were suspended. Obviously, those campuses were closed. And then the first and last mile service to the peak hour Amtrak trains, That's lines 90, 91, and 92. That's just that one trip in the morning, one trip in the afternoon from the Goleta and Santa Barbara train stations. Those peak hour trains were suspended. And from what we understand, those, at least both of them, which we would need both of them to serve this, both of them are not expected to come back anytime this calendar year. So what have we restored already? So we did restore booster service to the junior highs and high schools in Santa Barbara Unified. March 18th is when they brought students back to campus in person in a cohort model. And so on Mondays and Thursdays, they had cohort A, Tuesday, Friday, cohort B. These are all our lines. You know, this is sort of an invisible thing that happens out there unless you have kids in school. You may not know the level of service that we provide to the junior highs and high schools. And this is to boost our existing routes, because we know that if we just had our regular service out there, it would be absolutely overwhelmed by students, both now and certainly in the past. And so we did resume on March 18th. And then as of yesterday, these schools are back in person fully. There's still a percentage that are staying home remote, but on all weekdays except Wednesday, now 100% of the students who are on campus are going each day. We've thus far, yesterday and this morning, been able to pick up everyone who wanted to ride. We are boosting those boosters at this time. And so it also helps that last week we increased our capacity to 20 people per 40-foot bus. And so we certainly, I can tell you, I just saw the numbers as of this morning, there are definitely buses with 20 people on them for these boosters. So it's good that we made that change. So we are currently providing that service at a very significant level at this time. On-time performance. This is something that we in the planning department are very, very proud of. This is my 5th go round with annual service plan at MTD, and certainly the first 4 times a big focus was making changes to our schedule to improve on-time performance. With the installation of our vehicle tracking system about a little over 5 years ago, we have been able to actually see exactly how long the trips are, if they're late, if they're early from each time point. And so we've been able to look at that data, address it, and adjust the schedule accordingly. And so even with the pandemic, it was looking really good before. Even with that, and you'll remember, meant to put an image here, but you'll remember from our quarterly reports, those donut charts that as of late have been 100% green. And so meeting our on-time performance targets is something that we've been able to do now for over a year. And so I don't at this moment have any recommendations for our service plan to make any adjustments to our schedules for on-time performance. We're looking for them. We're looking at trip level tweaks that can be made. We're working with operations to figure out, is this something in the schedule, or is this, a particular driver, things like that. And so it's possible that there may be a few tweaks we want to make that we would have back for you at the second meeting in May when you approve the service plan. But as of now, I don't have any recommendations for on-time performance changes, and that is, I think, kind of a big deal. So I want to thank our planning staff for all their work over the years to make it work. So we talk about restoring service. This is something that we do not have perfect answers yet or perfect information. Neither do the colleges or universities, of course, about what their return to campus in the fall will look like. City College returns in mid-August, mid to late August, actually. And the data we have now, what we understand, they expect about 40% of students. I believe it's students, not classes, but 40% will be back on campus. That may change, it may fluctuate, might go up. But because of that, and while we don't know what our capacity on our buses will be at that time, we are recommending either partial or full restoration of the 15X, but certainly to bring it back in some way. This is a link between, if you're not able to make this trip on the bus, it's kind of a slog, right? Assuming that you don't have a car or are not interested in driving, right? Parking on the City College campus is notorious. And so we want to make sure that we have that link. It's a nice express direct route from the community where a lot of City College students live out to their campus in Santa Barbara on the Mesa. So we're recommending either partial or full restoration. What could that look like? That could be the same level as before, pre-pandemic levels. It was throughout the day, 15 to 30-minute headways, Monday through Thursday. Friday's always been lighter because there's just fewer people on campus. Those were 35-minute headways. And then we generally have limited service in the summer. There's fewer folks going to campus. And then in early January, basically, there's a sort of overlap or non-overlap of winter break for City College and UCSB. And so we have a little bit less service generally then. And then the 15X does not run on weekends. So partial restoration could be basically lesser headways. Maybe it would be 30-minute headways all day, or a little different in the peak. Essentially, when we talk about restoring service, the thing that's limiting us is bus operators. We need to make sure that in the final analysis, all of the service we're putting out there, do we have the drivers to make service, make it reasonable so that people don't have, particularly onerous or long work schedules, and while also balancing the fact that there's going to be people stacking up at bus stops. So we don't have an exact recommendation or a schedule to show you on this, but this is something we want to go out to the public about and get their take. And then as we look at the whole picture of what we have, and as we're able to hire up over the next several months, we'll have a more specific level of service. So line 16, this service has been paused again throughout the pandemic. It's a little quick route from downtown to the college. We were recommending this time last year, actually it was March 17th, I think, that we had, it was a few days before the shutdown last year, that we were coming to you and saying, we want to adjust the line 16 schedule slightly, adjusting the afternoon headways. And so we worked up the schedule and everything. In fact, it's actually in the current bus book. As this, it's just noted that it's not currently running. So we would recommend restoration of the line 16 at these new service levels when City College comes back in August. So the adjustment, just as a reminder, in case you didn't commit this to memory a year ago, the adjustments we're making to the schedule basically we're adjusting from what the previous schedule was, August 2019 schedule. Afternoon headways would change from 20 minutes to 35 minutes. So that's a loss of 5.5 total round trips. The span of service, however, would be extended slightly because this is the one that picks up at West Campus. And we were seeing that like the last classes were getting out, like 2 minutes before the last bus would leave. And so we've adjusted this to be able to scoop up some folks at the end of the day. We do think this is a reasonable level of service. It's still sort of 2 buses doing it in the morning, and then it would drop down to 1. So this is one way that, while bringing this back would mean we would need more bus operator hours out there, it would be brought back in a level that we think is reasonable and wouldn't sort of tax our workforce. One second. All right, line 27. This is our Isla Vista shuttle. This is the one bus that goes into the heart of Isla Vista. And it's been running the whole time, but we actually have, we're actually really lucky as a transit agency because, you know, most agencies throughout the state basically have 3 modes: weekday, Saturday, and Sunday. Because the school schedules really play into our service, we have all kinds of sort of things we can toggle between. And so in the bus book since forever, line 27 has had a UCSB in schedule and a UCSB out schedule. And so the levels of the 27 generally on weekdays fluctuate whether sort of school is in on campus or not. And so we've been running line 27 on the UCSB out schedule since March of last year. So that means it's currently at 35-minute headways on weekdays, and then the weekends are normal throughout the year. So UCSB in headways are every 14 minutes. So it's more frequent, obviously. And so what we would recommend is if on-campus instruction comes back, and I've heard varying numbers of how, like what percentage of students the campus is bringing back. I've heard up to 2/3. So if that's the case, we would recommend returning to the full UCSB in service because this isn't just students that use the 27, certainly, which is why we definitely didn't want to cancel it or suspend it. But there's going to be more activity. Right now, it's serving that sort of baseline of folks who are still on Isla Vista, which is a significant amount of people, actually. So obviously, a lot of people live there year round, and also some students have come back. So this is what we would recommend on the line 27. The 28. So this is the UCSB shuttle. This goes from Commuter Rail Marketplace, around the Marketplace, down Stork, to El Colegio, and to campus, of course. This is the line that UCSB funds the operation of. And so this is something that has been paused for the year. The level of service would depend on how many students are returning to campus. Like I said, it's a little unclear. Before the pandemic, this service was every 10 minutes for most of the day. So that's great for riders, but that's also a lot of bus operators and buses to make that happen. It's a lot of revenue hours because service runs from, I don't know, 7-something in the morning till nearly midnight. So we need to restore this in some capacity, but we don't yet know, kind of like the question about the 15, we don't yet know to what level we'll be able to do that. One good thing is this would be restored when UCSB comes back in. I don't know the exact date, but generally it's towards the end of September. That gives us a little more time to staff up, but we need to decide what that level of service will be, obviously, once we're putting everything out for August. So we really need to know by July. So we would be restoring this to either, if we are flush with bus operators, to 10-minute service, or 15. It's kind of how many buses you have out there at any given point. So you need 3 buses out there to do 10-minute service, 2 to do 15, 1 to do 35-minute, because they're just doing that route back and forth, inbound and outbound. So this is something that still has a little bit of a question mark, but we certainly would recommend bringing it back at some level. These are the continued suspensions that we're recommending. The line 10, and I'll sort of tell you why. Whoops. The line 10, which serves the Cathedral Oaks corridor, this line is, I talk about these in the staff report. It's very stripped down. It's our sort of worst performer in ridership, definitely passengers per revenue hour. This is down to, I want to say, 8 round trips. I forget what exactly it said in the staff report, but this is a peak service in Cathedral Oaks corridor. And in pre-pandemic times, it really functions as another booster for the schools along Cathedral Oaks. So junior high, Goleta Valley and Macalina and Dos Pueblos. We have in our booster service, because families were concerned, they're like, there's no line 10, that's what my kid takes. We boosted, we scheduled in additional service on the, I believe it's 2740 that serves that corridor. And that seems to have addressed the concerns. And so we'd recommend at this point continuing suspending the line 10 for this next year. We seem to have picked up the folks who were taking it. Line 36 Seaside Shuttle. This is in Carpinteria, of course, and connects the neighborhoods on the north side of the freeway to the downtown. We're recommending to maintain this suspension for now, at least in August. I've got some slides later about the possible routing on this that we want to talk about, even though it's still suspended. And then line 37, the Crosstown Shuttle, we suspended that. We do have the line 1 and 2. We've maintained full service on that, which has 10 to 15 minute headways throughout the day serving the east and west side. It's not the exact same route as the Crosstown, obviously, but we thought that if there was a place that we could pull back, it would be the Crosstown, since those neighborhoods are still able to connect to downtown and to each other. So we're recommending to keep that suspended for now. And then, as I mentioned, the 3 lines, 90, 91, and 92 that serve the Amtrak stations, those peak trains, we're recommending, of course, to keep that suspended until that service comes back. And like I said, doesn't look like it's going to come back until next calendar year. So we will stay in touch with LOSAN and SBCAG about that so that we can prepare. One moment. So Mr. Estrada discussed this a bit, but this one's hard. Service termination. I've not experienced termination of a line, only suspensions in my time here so far. And we are recommending the downtown and waterfront shuttles, as we know them, be terminated. The city of Santa Barbara is maintaining closure of State Street to motor vehicles. As we talked about, they're saying that they don't have the fiscal resources. This comes out of downtown parking funding, and they certainly did take a big hit because they didn't collect. We weren't collecting fares, and they weren't collecting parking fees for quite a while at the beginning of the pandemic. So State Street closed to motor vehicles, and the things that generally drive ridership on the waterfront are really just not back in operation. There are definitely people around, and tourism is creeping back, but they're just not there at this time. But I will say we definitely intend to be part of the conversation on the future of State Street, and we're glad that that's something that the city of Santa Barbara and the council are taking very seriously, and have actually put out information for folks to apply to be on a State Street committee. This, in fact, one of the sort of desired qualities of members is experience with transit. And just say full stop, there's really exciting things happening with the downtown, both the promenade and the conversation around housing. And we all know, certainly, I think the public knows, that to have a robust downtown, transit has to be a part of it. It doesn't have to be down the middle of the street, but it has to be a part of it. And so we want to be a part of that conversation. We are a part of that conversation, want to continue to be, because we know that a lot of folks rely on our service to get around downtown. It's not just tourists, it is residents. And so we want to make sure that we are part of that conversation. And that could look a lot of different ways, and we want to get input of what that could look like. But that at this point, the lines, as we know them, we are recommending for termination, both for the the fiscal reasons of not having that subsidy from the city, not having that money, just spring up for MTD. And frankly, it takes a lot of bus operators to operate. And so that's why it does cost a significant amount. The city certainly wasn't paying the full freight for what it was costing us to operate. So that's what we're recommending on those lines. So the line 36, the Seaside Shuttle, this is something that we were actually talking about a year ago. We're going to go out to the public about it, but then we ended up suspending the service and said, we'll talk about this at a later time. While we're not recommending bringing the Seaside Shuttle back in August, we do want to know if and when we bring it back, where's it going to go? So if we'll remember, there were conversations from folks in the neighborhood, and I'm going to show you a map here in a second, about the routing. The Seaside Shuttle, this is the current routing, or the last time it ran, this was the routing. It's a true circulator. It's really our only one. It really just goes in a loop all day. And it goes over here onto Casitas Pass and then Ogun Road and right on Camino Triado and then El Caro Lane. And so there's a stop on Ogun. This stretch of road has sort of been, it was in a different phase of the 101 project, but that stretch of Ogun gets a lot of local traffic trying to sort of skirt the freeway. And so we had complaints from one or two neighbors over the years about this routing. So we did some site visits, took a look, talked to folks about what might work better. And so there's really only two possibilities. This is what we're calling the Shamara alignment. You can see this is Ogun, this is how it used to go. And then what this version would be is the vehicle would go down Casitas Pass and then left on Shamara instead of Ogun, and then again right on Camino Triado. So we would obviously lose the stop on Ogun, but we have identified a stop. I believe it's, what's it called? So I think I have it in the staff report of what that, there's a cross street there, a small cross street, Haida, I think, is what it's called. And there's a little space there that we think would fit a bus stop. The other possibility is El Caro, and so you would just go all the way up and then a left on El Caro. The only issue is there's no stop. There would be no stop in between this one on Casitas Pass and the El Caro Park stop. So our recommendation, again, we want to go out to the public and certainly want to hear from Carpentarians on this, of which they would prefer. But we could do either one, but I think the preferred one, at least so far internally, would be Shamara, because there would be a stop in the neighborhood instead of just at the park. So those are the two possible alignments there. And it would also mean closure of the stop at Ogun and La Manita, obviously, and then Camino Triado and Granada, because you can see here there's currently a stop on that street. So what are we doing? We heard in a lot of public comment that we received in advance, and thank you for clarifying at the beginning, Chair Davis. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. We do this every year. We come to the board and say, here's what we're thinking of our proposed plan. You give us initial feedback, but no decisions are made today. And so then what we do, and this has become standard at this point, we go out with a sort of a combo of explaining the proposed changes and a survey to get feedback from people on that, an online survey in English and Spanish. It should be released tomorrow and it'll be available on our website. So that will be out there. We encourage people, and every year we get more and more input, which is awesome. And then we're going to have 2 virtual webinar meetings in the next month. No one's seen these dates because they were finally scheduled. We worked everything out with our Spanish language interpreter yesterday. And so these dates, and we'll put out a lot of information about this. We'll put out a press release, we'll put things on social media. But Wednesday, April 28th, so that's next week at 6 p.m. and then Tuesday, May 11th at noon. So those are the, there'll be virtual webinars. People can give public comment there, feedback. This is in place of our in-person meetings. Normally we would have one in Carpinteria and in Goleta and here in Santa Barbara. But we're obviously still, unfortunately, in a situation where we need to do this virtually. As is always the case, flyers will be posted about these meetings and about the survey at bus stops, on buses, and at the transit center. Like I said, we'll be putting plenty on social media, press releases, and then all of that public input and feedback, what we get today from the public, what we get from all the different ways we're getting it. We will compile that, share it with the board at the May 18th meeting, where we'll bring back our final recommendations for the service plan. With that, thank you for bearing with me. I know that's always a lot to take in. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blackerby. I want to compliment you on a fine report. I also want to compliment you and your staff for managing all of the demands and challenges that you've had to do this year in meeting both the COVID restrictions, but also working with the school district, as you explained. That's a whole nother level, order of magnitude of work. And the schedule and how they came back so quickly and whatever. Again, just compliments from the board relative to you and your staff in terms of your performance in that regard. We're going to do something a little bit different just because we will most likely have public comment on this particular item. Since we're today basically looking for comments and feedback from the board, I'd like to hear from the public first, and then we'll take the time to hear from the board. And before we start that, I want to just note that we have received 14 written comment letters, which have been transmitted to every board member, 13 of which basically comment on objecting or termination of the downtown waterfront shuttle and the Amtrak service to the train station by the shuttle itself. But we have received those, and as Ms. Blackerby indicated, as we come back in May, we will receive also any other written comments that the public wishes to make between now and then. So, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone under public comment who wishes to speak this morning?
Good morning. Yes, first I would like to read the names and the subject line of the written comments that we've received, and I'll do that quickly. As you said, Chair Davis, these have been sent to all board members to your email prior to the start of the meeting. And once I've read the names and the subject lines, we'll go to the first person who has their hand raised. So I'll start that now. First email is from Marilyn Brewer, subject line downtown shuttle service. Ann Hefferman, subject line reinstate the shuttles. Leslie Gonzalez, subject line 4/2021, item number 9, written public comment to be read into the record or forwarded to the mayor. And the rest of the emails all have the same subject line, 4/2021, item number 9, written public comment to be read into the record. And these were sent by Anna Marie Gott, Dawn Dunn, Lisa Rafel, and I apologize if I mispronounce, Meriwether Clark, Mary Robles, an email address dagweg@aol.com. That's DAGWEG@aol.com. Jim Marston and Crystal Barros. As far as attendees who would like to comment, the first hand that we have raised is Anna Marie Gott, who I'm allowing to talk now.
Ms. Scott, go ahead.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
I forgot what time of day it was. The first comment that I have is regarding your outreach. We have a substantial, number of the members of the public that are not able to participate in any of our meetings at the city, or the county or at your actual board, because they don't have access to the equipment that they will need for to participate in webinars. I know that you do allow people to call in, but the other issue is they don't receive, proper notice because they might not necessarily be on, social media. So I'm wondering about the type of outreach that will go to local schools, to retirement, centers, to other organizations that actually might serve these individuals. So that's one thing I just want to, bring up, because I think it's vital that people who use the services actually are going to get the chance to be able to participate in these workshops. And the workshops, because we are actually starting to reopen, I'm just wondering if you can consider actually holding something at like the Franklin Center or some of these other areas in town. The next issue I just want to bring up is, whatever you do, please do not actually terminate the actual services. Rather, suspend the services in the waterfront, even if the city continues with their decision to terminate the contract. We need to preserve those bus turnouts, and for later use, and it's vital that we keep those. Last thing is, which I think is vital for your budget. The city of Santa Barbara allows development with the idea that we are going to have an active transportation system. None of those businesses, from what I can understand, actually are required to purchase MTD bus tokens or passes, but they are encouraged, or they are even told in their conditions of approval, that they have to provide payment to their employees who use the buses. So you might actually work with the city to actually ensure that these businesses and or the property owners have to pay a minimum number of bus passes on a monthly basis. You don't do that now, and there are a substantial number of businesses that are only operating because of these the ability to actually use the transit. So that could be, thousands of dollars a month, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the organized thoughts too. That's easy to consume. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next.
Next, we have Jim Eaton.
Mr. Eden, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm a former driver, and because of health issues, I'm not working. But I got to say that I trust 100% what Jerry, because Jerry's a really excellent manager, and the whole team. And if the funding's not there, it seems like you can't really do the shuttle, because it's funded from the Downtown Merchants Association or parking. So yeah, if the funding's not there, it's just simply not there. But it would be nice to suspend it instead of discontinue it, because we are going to start getting tourists back very soon. And I'm hoping, I would like to see something that would go from the Amtrak station, actually at the Amtrak station when trains get there, that would take people to downtown. Because right now they kind of stay in that bunk zone area, but there's not many people coming into town. And the other thing with the Carpinteria shuttle going down Shamar Street would be a really wonderful, because there's a stop there, and then that curve on El Caro is kind of a not a very good turn for if you have to drive a 40-foot vehicle in there. But that's the one thing I would like to see is some sort of service that would actually go from the and then also on the when the tourists start coming back, a lot of people want to go right to the zoo. So if we had a bus that went like to the zoo from the train station, but but like I said, I have all the faith in our planning department and in Jerry especially, because I really enjoyed working for MTD, and I hope my health returns so I can come back. So, but that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope you can come back too.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Madam Clerk, next.
The next attendee I have listed as Jacob Lesnar Buxton. And when I allow them to talk, I request that they clarify the name so I can enter that into record.
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Buck, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Lesnar Buxton. I work at the Independent Living Resource Center. I am here today to advocate for the consideration of the state street and waterfront shuttles in some capacity. I have a lot of people with disabilities who called me over the past year or so who said that they use the shuttle to get to their doctor's appointment, pick up medication, or connect to Amtrak. I think there's a misconception that only tourists use the shuttle, and from the code I got, people with disabilities also need to. A replacement for the shuttle could be an on-call service where someone could call a number and get a shuttle to pick them up to go to Amtrak. This has worked in other cities I have lived in and would greatly help the people with disabilities who live in the lower state area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else?
Next, we have Natalia Giovanni.
Ms. Giovanni, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, board members. This is Natalia Govani.
Giovanni.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome. These waterfront and downtown shuttles are absolutely vital, especially to the elderly and residents. In addition, is a key feature of our tourism industry, which is a big segment of this city's economy. In addition, I echo many of the points that Anna Marie Gott made earlier about properly noticing the city. I would urge this board to really reach out to nextdoor.com and also to the various council members to make them aware of these upcoming meetings so that they can post them on their social media sites. Lastly, and most importantly, I would also make sure to clearly state in your future agendas exactly what these meetings are. Number 9 on this agenda today was very unclear, very vague, and it's easily mistaken or overlooked for meetings of this importance, of this significance. So I would, moving forward, just make sure that they're much more open, much more transparent, much more clear. So that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanni. Appreciate the input. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have an attendee that's just listed as Chris. And if you could state your full name, if you would like that to be entered into the record.
Chris?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Barrows, B like boy, A-R-R-O-S. And I did write a letter. Crystal Barrows is my full name. And I did write a letter, but I had asked for reinstatement of the shuttle buses along the waterfront, the ones that go to the zoo and along Cabrillo. But at the very least, I would just like to say, I hope you do suspend instead of terminate. And thank you for all the work that you do. I've used MTD for many times in many years and had nothing but superior service from you folks. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your input. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for writing MTD. Madam Clerk?
Those are all of the public comments that I have via email and with our attendees at this time.
Great. And again, for the public, other written comments that you put into the record or the input that we will receive in the public meetings and survey will all come back to the board at a later date prior to our decision. So thank you all for participating today. Now we will go to the board for your feedback and comments on these items. So who would like to begin? Ms. Limburger, Director Limburger.
Yeah, I have a question for Ms. Blackerby in terms of the outreach and wondering if the surveys will be available in hard copy for individuals who might ask for that, and if there's any outreach that will be done, so for accessibility in that way for the survey. And then as well, if there is any sort of targeted outreach that might be done in addition to the, press release and other items that will be out there.
Question. So yes, we can create a hard copy of the survey. We generally have, but now that I would say once the transit center opens, which is next Monday, that's where people would be able to access a hard copy of it. So the online survey will be available this week, but the hard copy will be available then, because that's sort of the only way we're interacting with the public, and soon will be finally. So yes, we can do that. We'll have it in English and Spanish. The online versions, there's an English and a Spanish version. The flyers are all bilingual. Our virtual webinar will have interpretation in Spanish and any other accommodations that are requested in time. And so there's that. As far as outreach, targeted outreach, we generally are going to different entities. One of the other ones, and Mr. Davis mentioned this, is we'll also be presenting at the Isla Vista Community Services District meeting. Obviously, a lot of our constituents are in Isla Vista, and so we'll be presenting at their meeting on the, I don't have the date in front of me, but it's, I think, May 11th meeting. And then we often are giving information through sort of our other alternative transportation partners, so Coast and all that, and the city of Santa Barbara usually puts things out in their newsletter, open to other possibilities. Obviously, if there were more in-person things going on, we would be going to in-person things and presenting on it, but definitely open to other suggestions for other outreach.
Great. Director McCrory.
Yeah, a couple of things. We're held at the mercy of the school district and the funding as far as how we're going to allocate the service. Excuse me. And I'm wondering, do we have sufficient lead time in order to prepare the run cuts? And then do we have sufficient time then for the drivers to bid on these new routes? I mean, it's got to be a nightmare for the planning department, but there are requirements that we need to have. The drivers have to have time to do their evaluation and do their bids. So that's one question. How's the planning department going to handle that? And then a secondary question is on the boosters. Typically, when we're at excuse me, at full service, once a booster gets done, it goes somewhere else and does a run. But since we've cut out a lot of our main routes, what's going to happen with the boosters once they go out and service school? Where do they go from there, and how are we planning that? So I don't mean to get down in the weeds and all that, but
I expect
having been there,
and I like
it. Are, important internally. The public doesn't see it, but it puts a heck of a burden on our planning and scheduling group.
You are right, Director McQuarrie, and yes, you certainly know how it works. I'll sort of answer your questions in reverse. We really haven't cut our main routes. So those boosters are, you're right, they're going out and they're doing that one trip and then they're going and doing something else. They're doing a 6 or 11 or a line 20 or a 3 or, there's all kinds of things those hook up to after that, or there's a split after or what have you. So they are linked. We do have some of those boosters, which are folks on the extra board are fulfilling that they've got sort of a longer gap in the middle between the morning and afternoon, but we're trying to find anything we can to plug in because prior to schools coming back, we had folks on the extra board, if possible, if available, boosting other lines, boosting the 6 and 11, and things like that. So we're trying to make sure that if people are working, they've got a full day and they're out there helping where we need help the most. To your question about the process and what it means for planning and how all these things work and preparing the bids and getting sufficient time. The concept of sufficient time has changed wildly in the past year. So we've, as you know, we have generally like 3-month-long planning cycles. We have 4 bids a year. We take our time to build things. We don't have that luxury anymore. And so often what has happened is we've done a double bid where we say, okay, here's what's going to happen if schools don't come back. Here's what's going to happen if they do. Drivers bid on both. So they bid on what their work schedule would be in both cases. And then we say, depending on conditions, okay, well, we're going with version 1 right now. If schools come back, we'll flip to version 2. And that's exactly what we did. And so we've done that throughout the year, throughout the summer, throughout, the August bid and November and March. And so we even had one in between in January. And then as far as changes, we've, for those that bid, right, if we have something that's not in the bid, that we can't toggle between, to create a new bid, it does take time because you're right. It has to be built by planning and then given to operations, be assessed, and then the drivers need at least a week and a half. We'd like to generally give them 3 or 2.5, but we've done it in a week and a half recently. So you're right. It can't be done overnight. It can be done a lot faster than we thought it could. But we are really at our limit at this point for how quickly we can turn things around. So to your question, we have had to adapt a lot, but we've been able to do it. Specifically, Jennifer and Mark and planning are just tremendous, ready to go, sort of, give them the challenge and they go like, all right, let's do it. So that's been wonderful. It's exhausting and we don't want to do it forever like this, but they have been able to make it work. But we just hope that with all of our partners, we have continued good communication so that we are able to get that information. The question that's in the air right now is summer school. The junior highs and high schools are going to have a much higher level of summer school this year because of the learning loss that's happened as people have been remote. And so we're trying to get those bell schedules to see what we can provide. And we don't know, what level of service we'll be able to provide, but we want to see what we can do. We got to know what time they're starting school and what days of the week, right, in order to do that. So we're trying to get that info so we can assess the feasibility. So you were right. It's complicated, but we're doing what we can.
Well, thank you. And what you just brought up are things that are under the radar, and it does put really a hardship on the staff. And so my hat's off to you for being able to handle this and keep those buses going out there, because if you didn't do that, the buses wouldn't go out. And so we don't want to miss pullout. So, congratulations for being able to keep your head above water for you and your staff. So hats off to you.
Great. Other comments, other board members? Vice Chair Tabor, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to Chuck for allowing Hillary to unburden herself there a little bit. As you mentioned earlier, the exceptional performance we're seeing across the board in these unimaginable circumstances we've had the past year has allowed our good people to really shine and highlight the importance of their work in the community. I mean, a little bit of mourning on the shuttle situation. That's kind of been one of our flagship not our flagship program since its inception. I'm glad to see we're part of the solution, working with the city and the downtown revitalization efforts. I think there will be some role for MTD following up there, but kind of remind everyone that loss of funding there was pretty significant. I think we were receiving $500,000 a year there at the end to provide that service. So it's not an insignificant amount that it costs to put those those shuttles on the road. The other question I had, I kind of recall on our lines 1 and 2, I believe we had quite a bit of people were leaving behind, and we're sending buses out to round those people up and get them where they needed to go. I was expecting a little discussion on maybe augmenting those lines a little bit, but I can see also that we're expanding capacity here in the very near future, and maybe we're considering that's going to pick up that extra load.
Yes. Yeah, we did expand capacity to 20, and we've been watching those specific trips because it's not all day, right? That we're leaving people behind, and so we're trying to target those. So it's definitely been looking better since we went up to 20, and actually when we went up to 15, we were at 12 people on a 40-foot bus for a time through the last big spike. So it is looking better, but yeah, there's definitely demand out there on not just that, but 6, 11, 20. So we want to make sure we're prepared. And one thing I want to just remind folks of is as we're doing this year, we are going to be starting this calendar year a short range transit plan. And so that's going to be a significant amount of public outreach. Not talking about just now what we're doing in August, right? But looking at a 5-year horizon of what our service in all ways should be and can be. And so we'll get to, I'm really excited about that. We got a grant to fund the planning of that. And we're going to be going out to the public in all manner of ways to really see what the people need, what they want, and what that could look like, you know, within the constraints of our situation. And to your question, I think, Jerry, you were going to answer on what the city was contributing on the shuttle. I think it was a bit more.
Yeah, it's over $1 million.
Over $1 million. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Other comments, questions? Director Sheeler, Bill?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to follow up on that. Does the city of Santa Barbara or the city council of Santa Barbara have a liaison to MTD that's working with us on this?
Mr. Strada.
Try and come up with some sort of alternative possibilities.
Really what it comes down to, I think, as far as the contract, it's going to be conversations between me and city staff as it pertains to the agreement. Long-term, really it's the efforts you see publicly and what they want to do downtown on State Street. And that's what Ms. Blackerby's been referring to. So there's the long-term, what's the downtown going to look like? And then there's a specific contractual item that we need to work through with the city. But at this point, you know, you have our recommendation, and we'll get back to you if we get any updates from city staff.
If I recall correctly, we purchased those BYD and have them custom made in order to meet the needs of those shuttles. And so hopefully if this doesn't come back, that we're able to repurpose those effectively.
Yeah, on that particular item, I'm glad you bring up fleet management because it's one of the other items we haven't touched on. That's a factor in our recommendation. We have repurposed those vehicles currently to traditional transit lines, so we are able to use those. We're fortunate to be able to do that, but it's worked out. It was in the back of our minds when we made the commitment, and MTD paid 100% of the cost for those vehicles. So we really paid for those. We purchased 8 of them. We leased another 6. We're using them on the crosstown, or we were using them on the crosstown, the seaside and downtown waterfront shuttle. And now we're using what would have been on State Street on the line 3. What that brings up long-term is our fleet, 30-foot diesel buses that are serve their useful life. Are we going to keep those, refurbish those, or are we going to retire those and use the BYDs there if the service goes away? So it's another factor when we recommend what to do with this service.
Chair, I did have one more question.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. This has to do with line 28. And it sounds as if the level of service is largely dependent on the level of students returning to UCSB housing along the El Colegio Stork corridor. And based on that, will UCSB provide full or partial funding due to where students are housed at any particular point in time?
I'll take that one. It's a contractual item. Where we stand with UCSB, when the pandemic started, we told them we would suspend the service because there just wasn't a need for it. UCSB pays up front annually for that service. So we actually have a credit that they're aware of, that when we restart the service, we'll draw down from that credit based on how much service is needed. And I think they've been appreciative of the fact that we just weren't running service for the sake of running it. We were efficient. We stopped it, and we'll bring it back efficiently as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Director Perotti. Paula.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just, most of my questions have been answered, so thank you. I just want to suggest that if Hillary hasn't done this already, please reach out to Kelly Hoover. I'm sure you have, and we can put it out, all this information to all our different social media sites. She's quite fabulous at getting getting the word out in all kinds of different ways. So I'm sure if you could reach out to her with that information, and just thank you to everybody for the hard work put into this. This is very complex, and gosh, good job, and thank you.
Thank you. Yes. In fact, I sent out a press release last week about reopening the transit center and restarting fare collection, and Kelly and Jamie are on my distribution list, and they sent out our press release like less than an hour after we did. In fact, I got contacted by a reporter who said, I saw Galita send information out about this, even though he got it too. He saw yours and not mine. So I definitely appreciate the signal boosting from the city of Galita on this.
Great. Mr. Stroud, I have a question on the city contract. What's the term on the old city contract? When is that up?
Yeah, my recollection is that it's June 30th, 2022. So next fiscal year would be the last year. From a contractual perspective, if nothing happens, it would simply expire. And the subsidy, it's not only suspended, but it would be gone at that point.
Okay, great. My comment will focus on that because as many of you know, I started with the city back in the day, and the downtown shuttle was a mitigation to downtown revitalization back in the 80s, coming out of the expansion of Paseo Nuevo. And in fact, we've gotten to a point here where, in fact, the city staff has indicated that they don't have either the funds or the desire to continue. But as Ms. Blackerby indicated, they're looking at a new visioning for downtown. So my comment would be that essentially at that time, suspension would indicate our interest in continuing downtown service in some form and waterfront service, pending obviously post-pandemic demands and financial resources. Clearly that's there. And very frankly, as you indicated, Mr. Estrada, with respect to capital, also basically looking at the operational and capital needs going forward in a new contract after 2022. So my own personal standpoint at this point would be to suspend, let the existing contract at least stay in place, showing our interest to continue discussions on a new contract for 2022, again, depending upon their visioning, funding, and the demands that a new downtown would lead to. So That's where I'll be at this time. Go ahead, Mr. Strada.
Yeah, a couple comments. The final one on DWE, as I mentioned, the factor I'll have to get back to you on before the final hearing is how we balance that with our fleet needs and as far as the DWE versus the 30 footers, et cetera. So I'll come back to you with that, more information on that, but I think we can manage it. The other two items that I wanted to highlight was first OTP in the presentation, and really, congratulate the planning team and Ms. Blackerby for her leadership the last 4 or 5 years. As you know, when we put in the tracking system and we're able to really have real-time information to see how we were performing, it was clear we had to make improvements for reliability. And I think that's what you see now. We're proud of that. The fact that we're able to come to you now without any real needs or needed improvements, I think is highlight to the planning team's work over these years. But it also segues into the next stage for us, which is how do we make improvements? I think one of the things when you look at studies that have done or surveys that have been done of public transit riders, it's about, how can we make that trip faster? How can we get them there quicker and efficiently and safely? And one of the things that we're looking at, for example, is transit signal priority. And Ms. Blackerby will have some more information for you in future board meetings, our conversations with local jurisdictions. We think that's a project that we need to elevate so that we can make the service even better. That's the next stage, going beyond just being reliable, but now make it better. The other item on the line 36 that Ms. Blackerby and I didn't get a chance to discuss, the maps you saw were really our older maps from last year when we were looking at rerouting them. What's happened since then is the 101 improvements. And Via Real and the roundabout has been extended now. So there's actually another path possibly, and that's feedback I've heard from Carpenter staff who've requested that I present at the Transportation Committee there, which I will probably in the next 30 days or so. So I think they would, if they were here, they would say, hey, there's another path potentially. I don't think it's the best one, but for full disclosure, it is there now. We'll have to update our maps. That'll be there. And then finally, again, throughout this past year, again, kudos to the planning team and all the different run cuts and work they did, but to our employees, our drivers in particular, and the operations teams, that every time you come with them with 2 or 3 different run cuts, it changes their life and their childcare situation. And what we're doing right now isn't sustainable in the long term. And that's why one of the reasons I try to avoid that conversation is because people will assume, well, you did it then, you can continue to do it. This isn't something I would want to ask of our employees on an ongoing basis. So because we spent some time discussing that and highlighting it, I want to make sure, we get the record clear that this isn't something we expect from our employees going forward. It's an emergency situation and they've been fantastic about it. I want to thank them for that. Those are my comments.
Hey, thank you so much. Again, I want to, Chuck, you have an additional comment.
Yeah, I guess we're in the process of hiring somebody to write the short-range transit plan. And we've talked about sometime in the future rescheduling or having another strategic plan workshop. And I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. So I just want to make sure that the scheduling and the timing of the SRTP is somehow going to be integrated into our conversations that we're going to have eventually on the strategic plan. So I just wanted to bring that up so that we don't lose sight of those two things that I think should be integrated. So that's my comment.
If we could have those things just entered into the other business on the next item, put that in the record, well, we won't lose that. We'll track that from there, Chuck. That'd be great. Excellent.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Okay. I just want to close by, again, kudos to the planning staff. All right. Again, great work under really contentious conditions. And also, as Jerry said, to the entire staff during this past year. Wow. Right. You guys basically put that service out on the street, kept it going under a really a lot of stress. Public, bring on your comments. We've got a month or so basically, and this item will be coming back to the board. We'll be looking for your comments and engagement during that. Hillary, thank you for what you've done to date, and we'll see you next month on this item for sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, if not any other items, I will close this item and move on to the last item on our agenda. That is other business and reports. And Madam Clerk, if you pick up Mr. McCrory's comment relative to the short-term transit plan and the strategic plan, just make a comment that essentially board would like to come back and coordinate those items coming back through the necessary committee and to the board itself, scheduling wise.
Noted.
Okay, other business reports. Anybody have anything? Director Sheeler, Bill.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to bring this up under the general manager's report, but we decided to
Good.
sit back because of the
Good.
9 o'clock time certain. And
good time. Go ahead.
Discuss this at this moment.
Yes.
And just, this is not news and we continue to mention it, but the service that the district provides is constrained by workforce constraints and with the ongoing difficulty in hiring more drivers and mechanics. And I was just wondering, can federal stimulus money be used to hire more drivers, number one? And can the entry-level salary be increased, number two?
Mr. Estrada?
We can absolutely use the funding that's available for all operating expenditures, which includes hiring individuals. From that point, it's about our collective bargaining agreement.
Yep. Good comment, Bill. Anything else at this point in time? Well, not seeing anybody. Everybody have a great morning. Look forward to the rest of the day. We will see you. Jerry, when is our next meeting? Next regular?
It would be the first, I'm sorry, it'd be scheduled for the first Tuesday in May, but I may recommend that we again consolidate for the second board meeting in May, where we'd be probably bringing this item back as well.
Okay. Well, that will be our tentative plan at the present time, unless we get back to you otherwise. Okay, everybody, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 10:21. Thank you all for your participation. Have a good day.
Thank you.